Good morning. I love that StreamYard asks me if I have an intro video. I don't. We just kind of hit go live and we start chatting. And today I'm so excited. I'm chatting with Patty. Patty, you've been you've exploded onto the LinkedIn scene in recently. I would say I would love for you to introduce yourself to our listeners. Tell us who you are, what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Patty. So I'm a legal operations manager currently in transition. But I really feel like I've been doing legal ops like for the past 7 years. I started as a paralegal. I thought I wanted to go to law school. I quickly realized I didn't. And so through many different in-house roles, I just fell into CLM implementation and process and technology. And then I decided to get my business degree, really to marry, I think, my legal experience with uh, business and technology. So, really that's kind of how I started and where I am now.
Oh, business degree. I love it. So you're thinking law school, but then you said, actually, no, a business degree. I love it, but still ended up in amongst the law people,
Yes. Yes.
lawyers. I
With
think.
attorneys, every day.
Yeah,
I'm not one,
right.
but I still enjoy it very much. And I like working with business people and being that bridge.
I love the disclaimer. I'm not one, but I enjoy it, which is which is a kind of a healthy combination. I remember I used to sit in as in house at Microsoft, and I picked up on this kind of earlier in my career, where people would introduce themselves when we were talking about contracting specifically. Of course, that's my favorite topic, and people would disclaim that I'm not a lawyer. I mean, I'm not the lawyer. I'm not a lawyer, and I always felt like, wow, what it's like. There's this abused syndrome that like lawyers have pushed on other people, other professionals, and I've just never. Plus, I hate the whole non-lawyer thing. I think that was my first post on LinkedIn back when dinosaurs, and I was chiseling things on a tablet. I was like, what is with this non-lawyer nonsense? What do you feel that? Is there a thing?
Yeah, I felt that earlier in my career, especially when I was a paralegal, that I would always be like non-lawyer, non-attorney, but I just feel saying like legal professional is fine.
Yeah.
But the reason why I always say like non-attorney is because I have a business degree, I feel like when I work, on CLM implementations and across the business, they almost trust me more because I'm one of them, but I also work inside of a legal department. So
Yeah, I like it. So you use it as a sword, not a shield. It's like
I'm sort of like I'm like you. I'm like an attorney too, but not really.
yeah.
Um, so it gives me like a really nice like bridge between the two.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I often find that I have to I wear two hats. Obviously, I get to choose which hat I wear today, depending on kind of who I talk to. Am I going to put on my lawyer hat, or am I going to put on my hey, I'm an ops professional. I'm a business person first. But you're right. It's like there's immediately though a sense in the room, right? Whatever it is, whichever direction it is, it's like a oh or there's something. I think yeah, I think that's a sign of just the legal profession. But let's talk for a sec about the legal profession and where we think things might evolve with the latest happenings in the techosphere. Tell me what you sense. You're in house. You said you're in transition. You're probably going to be joining some other interesting things soon, and we'll wait to hear. But what do you think lawyers are thinking and feeling with the evolution of technology that we're seeing lately?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because it's either at least the attorneys that I've had the pleasure of working with, they're jazzed about AI specifically. Like they're just
Okay.
jazzed. They want to use it. They want to find use cases. But then also, when I've spoken to some others and a lot of the content I'm seeing on LinkedIn from attorneys, that they're skeptical. They're not sure how to use it. They're like, really, is this just like another tool that we have to learn? Thinking that maybe it'll take away some of their credibility or authority if they're using AI in a certain way.
Like
So
they're cheating, like they
yeah,
need a little helper.
yeah, like cheating. And I even did a post on this about like the AI shame spiral. It's like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing. But I find that like attorneys there on like one side or the other. I haven't really found one that's like, I'm a little skeptical, but I'm really excited. Like
Yeah.
I get that. I think from business people, I definitely get that more.
Interesting. Yeah, there's definitely something's happening, right? Something's in the air. It is here. It's here to stay. I mean, it's silly to pretend it isn't, but it has been quite a monumental shift. So I've seen it. So at first we saw the explosion of CLM technologies,
Yeah.
and that was kind of a post-COVID. It just exploded. I thought it's sexy, for 2 decades, but everybody thought I was crazy. And now, it was everywhere. It was everything. And then this like tidal wave of AI kind of smashed into it, is what it feels like. And what I think we're watching is a bit of a whoa, a little like unsteady feet. People are like trying to get their sea legs around. I'm just going to call it contracting related technologies, but you are neck deep in this stuff. So I want to hear some war stories. What did you learn when you went through CLM stuff? CLM tech, CLM generally. My mantra: CLM is not technology. But just tell us a little bit about your journey and your lived experiences in your prior roles.
Yeah, I would say I think I have a well-rounded experience because I've worked on like failed implementations that needed a turnaround. I've also worked on like newly implemented systems that they implemented it, but maybe they needed a part that needed to be reworked. So like let's say uploading legacy contracts. I also have worked on vendor selection for CLMs and then actually going through the whole implementation process from the beginning. So I think I bring a lot of different experiences based on where you are in your CLM journey.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the difference in the approach. Like let's try to get some tips and practical guidance. We're going to start with the first scenario of we hate our thing, we've had it forever, we need to rip and replace, we need to reassess. Tell me how to tackle that, and then we'll switch to fresh and new ideas.
Yeah, I think first it's taking like an inventory of
Yes.
where are you in the process, right? So what workflows have you built? What processes are there? And really talking to people. I find if you go on a speaking tour, I think in the beginning of any new job, so if you come in, how I have in a previous role of, okay, it's a failed system, we need to reassess, please help me.
Uh-huh.
Go talk to people and figure out how are they using the system, what contracts are already in there, what intake flows are there, approvals, really getting a sense from like each department of the business of like how are they interacting with CLM, because you
Yeah.
might find that maybe one workflow is working really well and then another is you've got fringe people on the side that are trying to get out of using it.
Yeah.
So I feel like you need to do a speaking tour and
Okay.
do an assessment of what workflows are in there.
And when
And
you say speaking to her, you're doing the listening, the people are doing the speaking.
yes,
Right. Okay. We want to make sure everybody's like, you're not going out there immediately, telling them what to do and what should do. It's exactly the opposite, right? You're saying take stock. And I would love to just, let's put a really clear highlighter on this, right? It's an assessment. Assess the current state, understand it before you're jumping into conclusions. I think that's just that I couldn't kind of underscore that more. We see too many people jumping in. They hear a couple of anecdotal frustrations, like, well, I'm here to, change everything. And I think some people swoop in to kind of make their mark, which is, I get it. We all want to grow professionally, but I love your empathetic approach. You have to understand what's going on out there first, right? And, so let's say you do this. You go in, you swoop in, you hear all this stuff. And we know there's a lot of anecdotal. I hate that tool doesn't. I hate the tool. It doesn't work for me. How do you sift through and try to make sense of what you hear?
well, I mean, first I like listen to like the person because sometimes they just need to like vent and tell you how they feel. And like once I kind of get through that, because that's usually how the conversation starts, then I
Yep.
say, okay, like walk me through, okay, you have this type of contract. How are you engaging with the system? Walking them through, the intake form that's already there, for example.
Okay.
And is this making sense to you? Do you understand why we're asking these questions? Those types of, I think, conversations are just like really important.
And do
Uh,
you do that on your own? How do you feel? Is it like the head of legal ops or somebody in legal ops? Is it kind of just you? Are you bringing along special buddy skills, somebody else, or are you trying to kind of gather it yourself?
Well, I mean, I've worked in places where there was like an internal, consultant that really took stock of things first,
Yeah.
and then I had an assessment to work from, and then I go back to those department leaders and really validate from my experience of what I'm hearing, and is there a match. But I find that a lot of the time, if you're first legal ops hire, you're doing everything yourself. You are really taking like the business analysis. Like that's really what it is that you're going to the business, asking them how are they using the system, what contracts are they putting in, how is it working from once you get it into the system, of the negotiation, like back and forth process with legal and how they're engaging. So I've worked on both sides of, I've had to do the business analysis from scratch, or I've had an internal consultant, come in and I've read what they have said. And then that from there, I have to figure out, okay, is it valid? I have to check it. And which pieces do I tackle first? And is it a recommendation that maybe is not possible? So for example, like a feature, I think there was one time I read like, oh, you need to sort out the counterparty data, but there was no application in that CLM tool to do it, which was like, how can we have a million different counterparties and there's no consistency? Like they're just one feature within that CLM tool. So at that point, you can't really do anything until you work through the bigger things, right? That are more priority, and then you can see, okay, what can we really patch up? And
absolutely, there's too many
and all of this stuff,
Yes, all the dreamy advice is always like thanks, but that absolutely doesn't help me at all. It's like, oh, Lucy, you should run a marathon. Yeah, okay, thanks. I'm sure I should, but that ain't gonna happen. I'm for that.
Consultant, like I really feel like they're an advisor, and like they give what they see on the ground, and then up to that legal ops person to be the executioner and to have really good judgment on what should they start with.
Yeah. Now you said internal consultant. So, I mean, just because obviously that to me is interesting personally, like when you say internal consultant, you mean like somebody inside, maybe in the IT team, maybe it's a program management office, somebody has taken a look at it, or a consultant that's a third party and external that's brought in kind of to do an assessment, or
I don't know why I always think of like them as internal consultants, because they really embed themselves, right? Like if it's a really good consulting company, then they're embedding themselves in the business.
Okay, so consultancy.
Legal consultancy, yeah.
Okay, perfect, great. And again, this was not pre-scripted, so I appreciate you kind of noting that there is value that third parties bring. I mean, obviously, what we love to do is just be a SWAT team, right? We're just going to come in. We have no opinions. We know best practices, but we come in without having formed an opinion. We form it only, once we swoop in. But I also love what you're saying, is you've got to know how to use that guidance that you get from consultants. You are still that voice inside. You are you're the voice of the legal team. You're the voice of the business, really. So I love your kind of pragmatic and practical approach of the thanks for the guidance, but that actually isn't impactful. So you want to be very pragmatic is what I'm hearing.
Yes, very pragmatic. And if you are the one who's executing, you have to have the judgment of like, what should we start with? Like it might be different than what the consultant says, but I would find that you have to take their opinion, the business, and then also with workload and things like that, you also have to consider, and what is the GC's priority, what they need as well. So if it's like reporting that you need to work on, well, you got to first start with like intake and match it with metadata and all of that. So you have to start from a different place to then get to what the actual priority is, for example.
I love it. So priorities of the GC is super important. I want to double click for a second. We'll get back to like CLM specifics, but legal ops generalists all the time, I'm seeing this happen over and over, where like CLM is thrown in to the legal ops generalist. There may be one super small and mighty powerful legal ops leader and professional, kind of I think like you find yourself sometimes, and then they say, law department's a chaos, it's a mess, thank you, or you're here, we're so happy to have you here. By the way, can you also fix contracting? I think that is a huge tail that ends up wagging the dog and throwing you completely, out of whack. How do you marry or prioritize legal operations? And then is, CLM really part of it? Should it be part of it? I've got some thoughts. I would love to hear especially kind of when you're potentially contemplating another role in this, where you're going, hey, I'm going to be head of legal ops. What are the priorities? And is CLM a little too much to just add in to the mix? from the beginning?
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, this is prior to my time, but when I've spoken to other people in the industry, they said that, usually, like let's say 10 or 15 years ago, CLM was more like an IT like function. Like it was more IT, it could have been procurement. It was a different beast. And then I guess maybe through failed implementations, for example, or maybe business people weren't using it. They're like, well, contract is legal, so legal should get it. Right. I don't know if I have an opinion like one way or another because it's literally my bread and butter. And so
Okay.
I'm working with CLM, but I think ultimately it needs to be a partnership, especially with sales, with procurement.
Yeah.
And they have to take ownership of certain parts of the process. So legal might be the administrator or maybe the operational mind behind it, but
Right.
I find that procurement, for example, or sales, they are doing most of the contracting life cycle, right? We're just getting into like the little bit of like the negotiation and
Should
maybe
be.
the storage piece, right? The storage
Right.
piece and making sure that those correct contracts have expiration dates and we can be able to put together reports, and then procurement can go out, for example, and cancel contracts if they need to. But when you think about the life cycle, legal is just a little piece of it, just a little piece,
Should be. I
right?
love that you're saying that. I
Yeah.
love that you're saying that because, and I didn't lead this witness, absolutely legal should be just where it should be spending its most valuable time. But too often we're seeing legal chasing signatures, and digging and hunting and pecking and searching for things that really is a colossal waste of time. But hopefully technology will solve that. So that's interesting. What you're saying. I get it about CLM morphing into a thing for legal to solve away from, where it used to maybe be more about the business solving it. We're certainly seeing it all over the place. Like, who should own it? It's one of our favorite questions that we get. We've got some thoughts, but I'm going to pull a lawyerly. It depends. It really does depend on culture of the company and the people there and how it's structured and all that stuff. But double clicking back just to like CLM as a part of the legal ops function. What about all the other stuff legal ops has to do? Like, how have you had to balance both, or have you had kind of the I don't want to call it a luxury, but you've been able to focus on CLM as the core day job? What about all the other stuff?
No, I'm, I always like to describe like legal ops, like to me, if we were to define it,
Okay.
right? Everyone has a different opinion, but this is just mine. I think a legal ops person should have contract negotiation experience. Maybe they're handling, certain vendor contracts or NDAs,
Okay.
like these kinds of things, right? So I do think like a legal ops person should have contract negotiation experience and negotiate some contracts. CLM, tech implementation, AI, all of these things, but then also the budgeting, forecasting of your outside counsel legal spend and your tech stack. Like for example, I was negotiating pretty much all of our vendor contracts for our legal tech companies.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Because when I have to do the budget, I have to know how much things are costing and when the renewals are coming up and how can we negotiate, better rates and things. So that's one of the reasons why it's really good to have a legal ops person who knows contract negotiation for that reason.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I see what you're doing. You're connecting the thread.
Yeah.
It's not just like CLM for the enterprise. You're saying, hey, you got to negotiate stuff anyway because you're holding the purse strings of the whole law department and helping the GC, save money, right? Oh, I love it. Okay, that's definitely a cool perspective. Go ahead. You're gonna say something.
Yeah, and then the outside counsel piece is a different beast. So I also have managed, our e-billing platform, right? Because we need to understand how much are we spending, are we getting invoice reductions and timekeeper rate flagging and making sure that we're getting the best rate for the work that's being done. What's the mix of the firms that we have? Are we distributing certain work? Is something, are we paying too much for the same work that we could maybe outsource to, the Midwest that, technically does have some cheaper rates, even though they do just as good of work.
Yeah.
So the mix, the e-billing, understanding, how much are we spending? Are we over budget? Why are we over budget? Connecting trends, putting together reports for the GC so then they can tell the story of where is the legal spend connected to business priorities.
Amen.
Right?
Say it again. Say it again.
Yeah. Where is the legal spend connected to business priorities? Because, unfortunately, legal is the first to be blamed when we're over budget, when if we have to do something, we have to do it, and it's going to be connected to business priorities.
Yeah.
you have to be able to articulate the story and the trends that are happening within a year. Or if you have multiple years of data, that's also an interesting take, to look at across, like, let's say 2 or 3 years and see where the trends have gone up and down.
Yeah.
In business growth.
No, I love it. I love it. I think that what we see too often is we have law firm lawyers who go in-house, as most of us do. We start at law firms and end up going in-house. But few have this kind of transformation. Hey, you're not part of a business. You are now part of a business. The business is not lawyering. That's not the business. That was the law firm business. You're now part of the business. Your core competency is legal guidance and advice and risk mitigation and all that. But that transformation really doesn't happen often enough. So what we end up seeing is that there are lawyers that are functioning just as if they're still inside of a law firm. They're not billing hours anymore. That's their one big relief, but they're still functioning with that, like, I got to mitigate every risk. I got to find everything wrong with every contract. I need it. They just still kind of don't make that shift to business first. And so I think that's going to continue to be a pressure point. And again, as AI swoops in and the business starts realizing they can use it for some good enough lawyery stuff and then avoid legal altogether, it's almost like, oh God, are we going to go backwards where legal used to fight for a seat at the table for decades? We got it. Poof. AI came up on the side and suddenly the business is like, yeah, no, you're good. I didn't need you. I just looked this up on ChatGPT, because that is happening, right? So anyway, I digress, but we do have a question that just swooped in. Any recommended resources to learn more about budgeting and legal spend forecasting?
Interesting. So I will plug. So I am the co-lead for the External Resource Management Group of ACC. So it's everything to do with external management, really thinking about outside counsel spend. So we just finished our budgeting session. So we did like 2 different sessions on how do you budget, how do you think about it, where do you start. So I would say, like, definitely that group is really good. And I also can provide some like presentations as well that like we have put together.
Super fantastic. So connect on LinkedIn for sure. Reach out to Patty. Obviously, we've got a bunch of content material that we do. I'm a CLM nerd, but I'm also a legal ops generalist. I kind of been there and done all that. So we're always happy to provide samples and chime in. Reach out.
Forecasting is a whole different beast. It's just completely different. And that's another reason why having a business degree has really helped me, because I went through 4 or 5 courses on accounting in budgeting. And I even took a class where we had to come up with a fictitious business and we had to put together a budget of like, what is that going to look like? And I find when I did that experience moving into a role where I had to do that, it was so much easier.
Yeah. No, I think that's so important. As we're seeing legal ops, of course, professionals coming from so many different backgrounds. One of them is lawyers, one of them is business, one of them is technology. I'd say that's kind of the 3 big buckets where we see legal ops pros, coming from. And based on their background, that's how we see that legal operations function forming inside the legal department. Hopefully it's aligned with what the GC needs. Hopefully that's aligned with where the business is going. But we are also seeing some interesting things happening with how just that whole legal ops role is evolving, as we know. I think
it's wild out there. So I've been in transition, applying to jobs, right? Yeah. And if you even just look based on like the market and the job descriptions, it's the wild west out there, because you either can have, a legal ops position that's everything in the kitchen sink, from e-billing, compliance, contract negotiation, CLM, AI, everything, right? Or it could be, something that's very similar to what I think it should be, contract negotiation, budgeting, forecasting, CLM, tech implementation, and then they'll add on something.
Huge compliance program.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Or there are, very specific legal ops roles that are just for e-billing, right? But I wouldn't call that just legal ops, right? I just think that is e-billing specialist, and they are really good at probably the accounting side of things. So I see a lot of people that were in accounting in like financial services, for example, and then they kind of transitioned to in an in-house department. So it's the wild west out there.
It is, and it has been. I think it's kind of also the an outcome of some of the success that the legal operations profession has seen, right, since the rise of Clock, ACC Legal Ops. Now it's legalops.com. With all due respect, it's all kind of similar in that they have a list of like 12, 14, 16, I don't know, it's always some double digit number of like competencies or functions. And I'm going to do air quotes because it is completely overwhelming. I think what you're doing, just describe it, what it means to you. But I think what the GCs don't know, they know they need it. They don't know what to call it. And we've helped legal teams hire for these functions. And we're like, whoa, hold on. We're going to have to break this down either into multiple job or, roles, or you're going to have to prioritize with a really blunt instrument. Like you're going to have to just force prioritization. And the top two issues, it's exactly what you're saying. The top two things at every law department: spend management and contracting.
Yes.
Like the contracting problem. They don't even know how to define it. Never mind whether it's they need new tooling, whatever. They just have, they need more lawyers. They need more commercial lawyers because contracting is a mess and the business is pissed off. Oh, and by the way, my law firm spend is out of control. And you're like, well, okay. Two big things to solve. And that's just two. And then you look at the competencies in all these different, organizations, which again, I've spoken at the first clock thing and I spoke at the next 7. Like I've been around all of this as it was forming and storming. The reality is it's what does the GC need to do to align with the business? That's how you should define legal ops. What is the enabling that needs to happen for the law department to support the business? And guaranteed into that enabling box, your priorities will define, I think, what legal ops should be for that company. Because you're spot on. It's all over the place. I bet when you applied and tell us, but like, where you're like, what? That's not legal ops. I think what you need is a technical PM, or hey, I think you need a head of finance. Like this isn't. Did you see it? Like, is it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there were times when I would ask the question of like, what does legal ops like mean to you? Because I see all of these different like competencies here, and many I definitely appreciated GCs that I spoke to were honest and said, we just don't have the budget for multiple people, and like we don't know what to call this thing, so we're just calling it legal ops. And I can relate to that when you have so many different competing priorities and you have one spot. And you've got to figure out how to do all of these things. But then I also feel like that's where like, alternative legal service providers come in, right? So if there's like a sliver of something, entity management or equity management, something like that, maybe you can outsource it, right? So yeah. And so you have to kind of figure out what are your top priorities, I feel as a GC, and then, okay, are there lower level things that, are important, they have to get done, but is there a way to outsource it to someone that has the expertise specifically to do it?
Yeah, absolutely. Prioritization it's the hardest part, and people like to just kind of oversimplify, again, the contracting problem. And you're like, that's actually not a problem statement. Like you need to hone in on the problem before you jump to solutioning, which is an age-old mantra. But we got
what goals are. Like,
go ahead.
What I'm trying to do.
Okay.
So, when I've worked with one GC, there's like, we need to run reports. We need to know how many contracts are coming in, what's expiring, what's activating. That is a very clear problem statement of we need to solve this problem. And of course, CLM is going to help solve that problem once it's rebuilt.
Yeah. But you know what? That's not the time to jump in and get distracted with contract review automation. Like that's just not the time. Like what you're saying, I would say perfect. They've got a goal. Can we make sure we tackle that roadmap? Fantastic. Add other stuff to it. But I think right now people get so overwhelmed and excitable. It's like going to a buffet when you're hungry for a snack, and you're a very specific snack that you're craving. Then you get to the buffet and you're like, it's amazing. So you're watching the demos and you kind of want it all, and it distracts from that goal. And I love that that's a very specific goal. Visibility for the GC is critical, and yet they have none. They know there's too many contracts, not enough time, and they need more lawyers. Nope, right? They have to tell them how many contracts, what type, what are your lawyers actually spending time on? Guess what? NDA review, bye-bye. Get that out of there.
No, and that is like the one thing that, if you were still reviewing tons and tons of NDAs, like that can be just a problem that you can tackle first.
Agreed.
Right? Tackle it. And I'm a huge proponent of one NDA. I love that project. I've worked with one NDA. I think it's fantastic. So anyone watching this, like check it out if you're still reviewing a lot of, NDAs, because it's a mutual template. It's gained traction in the industry. I've seen it, when we implemented it, it went from 40 to 85% of we're negotiating on our paper 15%, are, potentially, R&D or customer related NDAs. And those sometimes you cannot negotiate on your paper, and that's okay.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's a fantastic thing to close on. And I'll say we're tech agnostic in our company. And I will say I used one NDA. I've now used it on 2 occasions. And I don't, again, I don't do endorsements. I don't do any of that stuff. But hey, what's right is right, and what's good is good. And
Yeah,
it made my job easier. So I did it, and kudos to them. And I know those folks, and they actually swooped in and created something that works.
And they also have a material transfer addendum. So if you're selling, a product that is very specific technology, you can use material transfer addendum that's on their paper, and that also has gained, traction, at least from my experience. So I think they're coming out with more and more templates.
Yep. Well, great.
Look,
unsponsored free advice right there. We're always very very transparent with our disclaimers.
Yes.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, Patty. We were already out of time. We have so much more to do. I know you'll be back. I'm going to have you back because I want to know where things go for you. And by the way, personal note, early congratulations on an upcoming wedding, number 1. And number 2, we didn't even talk about goat rodeos. That is on the agenda for our next conversation. Goat rodeos.
Yeah, we did not talk about goats, but you are the greatest of all time, queen of CLM. That's what I said.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.